Tricorn Tom Moore. I am in for Camp Constitution, Hal Shurtleff, and WBCQ Radio, which airs Monday night, 7:30 p.m. Camp Constitution is a family camp. You can find us on the web at campconstitution.net, and we go up for a week and 1 day every summer to beautiful Rindge, New Hampshire, out in the woods there, and we talk about the Camp Constitution with some of the nation's top experts. So here we are 1 week into the new year of January, and boy, we have a lot to celebrate, but we have a lot of concerns as well. And tonight we will be talking with one of our instructors, and that is the Honorable Daniel Vincent McGonigle III, who is the editor and writer of a book called Execute the Laws to Restore the Public. Dan, are you there?
Yes. Execute the Laws to Restore the Republic. Yep.
Absolutely. It's a great book. I have it right here in my hand. And, Dan, why don't you tell us right away how you can buy that book through the camp or online?
It's posted at the camp bookstore.
Okay, on campconstitution.net. And
that's right.
That's great. And of course, if any of you come up to visit us, it's sitting there right there on our book table. I'm going to say it's a really nice book, really nicely done. There's a lot of great essays, historical essays by writers of the Second Amendment throughout our great history. I want to say something else. Dan and I are both friends of the top scholar on the Second Amendment, that being Dr. Edwin Vieira, who wrote a book. He wrote Pieces of Eight, and what else did he write on the Second Amendment, Dan?
He wrote Constitutional Homeland Security, the Nation in Arms.
Yep.
And then he wrote, that was about 190 pages, paperback. Then
right.
he wrote the second Constitutional Homeland Security number 2.
Right.
And the title of that second volume is 23. Well, the title is The Sword and Sovereignty. The Constitutional Principles of the Militia of the Several States, and that's quoting Militia of the Several States, quoting Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1.
Right.
And there is no such thing as the Militia of the United States, which is falsely claimed in Title 10,
right.
United States Code, Section 311.
Right. Before we get into that, hang on, Dan. This is great. So, and I'm reading off the cover of Dan's book. It says, Intro to Continental Homeland Security, Emergency Powers, Martial Law, and the Common Defense. So what Dan just said, going into it, it sounds a little bit complicated to people that aren't really 100% familiar with both clauses of the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And if it sounded a little bit complicated there, it is. And as Dan was saying, Dr. Vieira writes thousands and thousands of words on this. He's a scholar. He has 4 degrees from Harvard University, and it is kind of complicated, and what I can say is sort of more of a lay reader that hasn't delved into it like those two gentlemen is, this book is probably the best. I would call it, would it be fair to call it sort of like a Reader's Digest version of Edwin Vieira, where the reader that's not familiar with all this, he can get it in an easy-to-understand form? Would you think that would be accurate?
Well, my book was a first crack. It was rushed to have it ready for the summer 2013 camp, and
right.
It's got several commentaries by Edwin, and he has all of them, all links to all his commentaries since 2005 are at newswithviews.com. And it also has, I went into martial law because there's so much misinformation out there about that subject.
Right.
I reprinted about 30 pages of pamphlet from 1862 by Judge Samuel Smith Nicholas.
Right. Before we go into the specifics,
yeah.
I want to save that for the end. I'm just reading from the contents here. So, yeah,
Yep.
Dan makes Vieira very easy to understand. I've read through this book twice, and he backs it up with some of Blackstone's commentaries by George, St. George Tucker, some S.S. Nicholas, and the Primer on Martial Law by Edwin Vieira Jr., and then there's a lot of other stuff which is interspersed in here. Sam Adams has a piece here on the rights of the colonies. It's just really, really well done, easy to understand, and
rights of the colonists.
Yes,
of the colonists.
Absolutely. So here we are today, and it is 2017. Happy New Year, by the way, Dan. We're into the new year. And, Dan, did we dodge a bullet with the elections this year? What a huge difference. Maybe a Republic-saving difference it was between the gun-grabbing Hillary Clinton, who openly said she wanted to outlaw guns, who was for confiscation, and Donald Trump, who I guess he got the earliest nomination from the National Rifle Association ever, and it seems like Don Trump could be pretty good for the Second Amendment.
Yeah, so he says, yeah, and I don't have any reason not to believe him because based on year and a half since June of 2015 when he announced.
Right. So yeah, I definitely don't think that he is going to move for any new laws against the Second Amendment, new infringements on our right to keep and bear arms. So that is good. That is very good. And as I said, it could be the Republic saving difference. If we had another 4 years, I think Hillary Clinton was actually, and this is her stated platform, who knows if she would have been worse than a Barack Hussein Obama, who has just been terrible for the Second Amendment and so many other, the entire Constitution as a whole. So
Trump. He's got a section during the campaign. He had a section on his website specifically on the Second Amendment, and
right.
I recall that he's one of the people calling for a national right to carry,
right,
instead of a state by state. In other words, if you have reciprocity in all 50 states with the national right to carry, and
right.
Which essentially is, that's, if militia existed, that would be an automatic mandate anyway.
Right. So, yeah, by a comparison, if we look at countries like, say, I guess Switzerland or maybe Israel, where they have a militia, so what would you and I sort of be required to do if we lived in one of those countries, Dan?
Israel, they have a mandatory military service,
right,
for so many years for every person.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they have a militia or not, but they have mandatory military service.
Okay, I know a lot of countries have that, but Switzerland actually does have what we would consider a modern militia. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, they go back hundreds of years with their militia, and it's been watered down a little bit in recent years with pressure from the EU. But they, as far as I know, the system is still intact.
Right.
And every member after boot camp, minimum age, you go to boot camp, and then you're in the militia for your life. And everyone's issued a battle rifle, which is a military-grade battle rifle.
Yeah.
And so much ammo that in an emergency, they'd have enough ammo to get from their house to the local barracks.
Right. So they actually keep the gun, they keep that military rifle and the ammo at home, right?
Right. A limited amount of ammo at home.
Right.
And most of the ammo is stored at every local barracks.
Right. And they more or less, like we were supposed to have this system. In fact, I remember I was honored to give a speech written by Dr. Vieira at the founding of two organizations. Oath Keepers was there, and also Walter Reddy's. What was the name of his organization? I want to get it right.
Committees of Safety.
Committees of Safety. So it was a half-hour speech. It was a real honor to give that speech on Lexington Green. And basically what Dr. Vieira said is, in so many words, that the Second Amendment is not just a right, it's an actual duty. And it's the only thing in the Constitution which the founders said was necessary to the security of a free state. In other words, you better keep this tradition, boys, or you could run into trouble. That's one of the protections, the physical protection of this Constitution, is in keeping this militia system that we gave you. So you spoke a little bit about Switzerland. What was sort of the militia system like here back in the colonies when we had it? What was that like, and how should it be today?
Let me just make a comment to what you just said, and then I'll get into the early colonial militia.
Okay.
To begin with, but I just posted recently. I do a lot of postings on Facebook, a lot of original short commentary. And,
right. Would you like to say your Facebook post so people can find that right now if they're online?
Just type in my name, Daniel Vincent McGonigle III. I'm the only one there with that name, and it'll take you right to the page.
Okay, and I'm going to spell it. It's McGonigle. That's Daniel Vincent McGonigle, and you can find him on Facebook right now. Okay.
Okay. Oath Keepers, National Oath Keepers, they posted. They reprint a lot of articles written by this guy named David Codrea, Codrea.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the spelling, but Codrea. And there was another article by this gentleman, and it was written originally on the website ammoland.com.
Okay.
And Oath Keepers on Facebook, when you post a link, the link comes up, a visual of the link comes up, and then above the link you can type in your own comment to the post that you're putting on there. Well, what Oath Keepers wrote is they quoted Codrea, and it goes to what you just said. They said an armed citizenry, unquote, is necessary, quote, necessary to the security of a free state, unquote.
Right.
And I reposted that, and I said, no, that's incorrect. A well-regulated militia is necessary to the security of a free state.
Right.
The reason I said that, the reason I posted that on my page with my comment to their quotes was that an armed citizenry is not necessarily, in and of itself, an armed citizenry is not a well-regulated militia.
Right. And so we might want to just, right before you get into that, what did, and this has always been a debate with liberals too, the meaning of well-regulated. And of course, the liberal will say, I'm not talking about the classical liberal, I'm talking about the modern-day liberal will say, yes, so well-regulated means that the government should regulate it, and whatever the government regulations are, that's going to make it well-regulated. But that's not what the founders meant, is it? That's not what they meant.
My understanding, and I've read through the United States statutes at large, beginning with 1789.
Right.
And I followed all the militia acts from 1792 on forward. There were two militia acts in 1792, May 2nd and May 8th. And that was for uniformity uniformity across the 13 state lines.
Right.
That was the purpose of the Federal Militia Acts,
right,
or the National Militia Acts versus State Militia Acts, which go back before the United States Constitution. And if you go to Article 1, Section 8, there are two in the U.S. Constitution. There are two clauses, 15 and 16. The 15 is the list of three powers where the president, where the Minister of Federal States can be called forth for federal purposes or into the service of the United States.
Right.
And then the third one.
When they said, just briefly, Dan, when they said well-regulated, I heard that they would talk about a well-regulated clock, that it worked well. It means it was well-functioning. It didn't mean government regulations necessarily, right?
I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that.
I just try to keep it simple for people, yeah.
The next clause, well, for people who never opened up a pocket Constitution, I'm giving them the info where they can find it. Okay, the next one. In the clauses are not numbered. I've only come across one type of pocket Constitution that actually numbers the clauses, but in any typical, in the original document and in any typical pocket Constitution, the clauses are not numbered, so you're going to count them down.
Right.
You're going to go through the 18 powers in Article 1, Section 8. So the number 16 is the organization of the militia. 15 is the powers. 16 is the organization. Now, the purpose was to have uniformity across state lines. So what it specifically says is, and this is what well-regulated actually means, it means organized. The militia shall be, to provide for. The Act language is to provide for, Congress shall have the power to provide for the organizing, arming, disciplining of the militia, and then it mentions the training of the militia, which is done by the states, but according to rules of Congress. In other words, uniform rules across state lines, but the states do the training according to those uniform rules. Each state does their own training.
Okay, Dan, this is important. I'm just going to reiterate this. So for those of us who are fighting this fight and have to define what well-regulated means, you're quoting directly from the Constitution itself, and what was the clause and section again that can be found in?
I tell people to go to Clause 16, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 16.
Article 1, Section 8, Clause 16, and they define exactly what well-regulated means in a legal term. So once we know that, then there's...
It does not say that that's the definition of well-regulated.
But that's what it is referring to, yeah.
Back in the day, everyone knew what well-regulated meant. And it gets twisted around today. They don't want to follow. A lot of people in the Liberty Movement don't want to follow Clause 16. They just want to call something a well-regulated militia based on what they think it is.
Right. So there are some organizations, like we mentioned, Stewart's organization, which is Oath Keepers, that they want to kind of have a loose definition of sort of like a private militia and say that is constitutional when, in fact, it is not, and could cause more problems.
Right. The Second Amendment essentially says, changing the language a little bit, essentially says the well-regulated militia is, instead of being, I changed it to is. The well-regulated militia is necessary to the security of a free state. Therefore, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, because you can't have a militia if the people aren't armed.
Exactly.
So they mandated that everybody had to have the right to keep and bear, which would supply those people to participate in the militia, and at that minimum age, the captain of the local militia company would enroll you into it.
Right. So if we had kept those traditions today, you and I would be part of a militia. We just would be, and
You might still be. I
Right.
might have aged out by now, but you might still be.
Right. So yeah, I'm not 60 yet. So then looking at this, so we know we had this conversation that a lot of people come to an understanding of the Second Amendment through their families, through tradition, but others come through the NRA. So the NRA, I think of the NRA as like the McDonald's of gun organizations. They are the biggest, but they're not necessarily the best, and they focus almost entirely on the second clause of the Second Amendment. And so, unfortunately, they are the big mouthpiece for the Second Amendment. So, unfortunately, that's all people know. So then people look at that, and they love their guns, they love America, and they say, okay, so the militia then, we get together with a bunch of other guys, and they redefine it, but basically a lot of people say that's a militia. You can just have your own militia, and you have a right to your own militia right there in the Second Amendment. So I'm paraphrasing, but that's sort of like a brief misunderstanding that a lot of these groups get into, and it could cause trouble, you know? Right?
Yeah, the NRA doesn't get involved in the Clause 1 of the Second Amendment.
Right.
So, but a lot of times you'll hear people talk about Second Amendment rights.
Right.
And actually, the Second Amendment, the first clause is powers, duty and power.
Right.
And the first clause is duty and power. The second clause is rights and power. No, duty and rights. Duty and power, duty and rights. And which, I mean, the right to defend yourself, to defend life, liberty, and property is a natural, inalienable, natural right. So you already have that right. And anyway.
So so we got about 6 minutes before we close. I just want to give people a couple of maybe more concrete examples. So let's look at two examples. Maybe you pick one first, and that is the example of Ferguson, Missouri, and also the example of the Bundy Ranch, where you have people coming from Oath Keepers and other organizations from other states, you know, with their guns. Now, you know, I think you've studied those better than I can. Do you think that those were that they were lawful in doing that in those cases?
Well, regarding Ferguson, what are you asking was lawful in Ferguson?
So you have members of Oath Keepers flew to Ferguson, Missouri during the riots to help, I guess, business owners to defend their properties, and they were walking the streets with police and stuff, you know, kind of like as a quasi-militia.
I don't know if they were walking the streets with police. What I do know out there, they volunteered to be private security for some property owners.
Right.
Which does not, you know, it's not a public public power. It was a private protection.
So in that case, they were not. They were just you know, individual people helping out, and but you wouldn't say as an organization, you know, they were acting necessarily as a quasi militia in that capacity.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't there.
All right.
I don't know actually what went down, but I mean, quasi. I don't recognize anything that's called quasi-militia. I don't recognize unorganized militia. There's no such thing in the Constitution, even though Title 10, United States Code, Section 311, says there is.
So then you have other situations like the Bundy Ranch, which I believe was mostly private property, or there was contested, which was public property. And then you have also the situation in Oregon in which LaBoy Finicum was killed. I think in that situation they actually were calling themselves militia, right? Is that correct?
I don't know.
I think they were. Yeah.
There. I do know. I watched a video with four guys in a video standing side by side. The initial video, and they were requesting people to come to Harney County, Oregon.
Right.
And they include. And one of the groups that they mentioned were militia groups. Right. Now in the United States, in the 50 states, there are no militia. But so what they were talking about actually were private paramilitary groups that some people mistakenly call militia.
Right.
in a constitutional sense, which is the only sense I recognize. And before the Constitution, state and federal, they were colonial militia by colonial statute. So it was all a statutory organization.
Right.
Bundy Ranch, the private property, there were people there, they called themselves militia, but they weren't militia because it's a state, it's state legislated entity, it's a state institution, and going back to the 1600s to the colonial, it became colonial, then provincial, then state.
Okay,
all by statute.
That's great. So we're at, wow, we've really gone through, this has been a great and gripping half hour, so we're coming through to the end. So this is sort of a question I threw out to you recently, too. So suppose, for some reason, you can get a 2-minute meeting with, Donald Trump, and Wayne LaPierre is there of the NRA, and Larry Pratt, who we know from Gun Owners of America, Dr. Vieira, and yourself, and suppose you're the spokesman, and you've got to say to Trump in 2 minutes what we need to do. So here we are, we're in the Oval Office, and Dan McGonigle has got to deliver the message. What's the message to Trump?
Okay, my two-minute elevator speech would be, Mr. President, you are not only the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States.
Right.
You are also, when the militia of the several states are called forth into the service of the United States, you become also the commander-in-chief of the militia of the several states.
Yes.
So he has that power according to the document, but he cannot exercise that power because the 50 state militia have been disestablished and disbanded. We the people have been disbanded since the beginning in 1903 when this statute started doing the disbanding.
Now, theoretical question. So if Trump was to reestablish the militia, would he need to pass any new laws, or are those laws still on the books? Have those laws been repealed by the Dick Act, or are they still there?
Trump could, in my estimation, because the 1903 Dick Act was the Militia Act of 21 January 1903.
Right.
Because that was unconstitutional, for the most part. When it said the organized militia shall be called the National Guard. Totally unconstitutional. So basically, since that is null and void, and it alleged to repeal the Militia Act of 8 May 1792.
Right.
That 1792 Act technically is still in effect. So all Trump would have to do is sign an executive order saying this is an unconstitutional act. Therefore, the United States militia of the several states are now under the 8 May 1792 Act.
Right.
And we are going to, according to that act, I'm pushing for the governors and the state legislatures to reorganize all 50 state militia.
Wow, that sounds great.
Executive order.
That sounds great. I hope that you get that meeting. We're now at the end here, so I'm going to quickly close and say everyone can find Dan's great book, Execute the Laws to Restore the Republic by Daniel Vincent McGonigle III at hwtp.campconstitution.net. And if you don't know about us, we're a family camp. It's like 300 or a little more for everything for the campers during the summer. And our camp session is going to be Sunday, July 2nd to Sunday, July 9th, 2017. And this is Tom Moore in for Hal Shurtleff. And thank you for listening, and hope to see you up at camp this summer. Thanks so much.
Great job, Tom.
All right. Good night.
All right. Good night.